The Agenda with Steve Paikin is made possible through generous philanthropic contributions from viewers like you. Thank you for supporting TVO's journalism.
A lifetime in politics destroyed in an instant. Just 4 months after being overwhelmingly re-elected, John Tory said on Friday that he'll leave his post as mayor of Ontario's capital city. Tonight, the stunning announcement, the fallout, and what comes next. Then, two giants of Canadian theatre are here, Shauna McKenna and Tom McCamus, on their play, Things I Know to Be True, currently on stage in downtown Toronto. It's Monday, February 13th, and that's all ahead on the agenda. As we sit here right now, John Tory will not be the longest-serving mayor in Toronto's history, as he would have been had he completed the term he was just elected to less than 4 months ago. Instead, he's become, yet again, another infamous leader of Canada's largest city, leaving in disgrace, and just as the strong mayor powers he'd lobbied for were about to come in handy in passing a budget bigger than half the provinces of this country. What happened, and what's to come? With us on that, let's welcome former chief planner for the City of Toronto, mayoral candidate in 2018, Jennifer Keesmaat, who now runs Marquee Developments. Sabrina Maddow, columnist for the National Post. Marcus G., columnist for the Globe and Mail. And City Hall reporter for the Toronto Star, Ben Spur, who helped break this story. And it's great to welcome all of you back to TVO for this bizarre time in the history of the capital city of the province of Ontario. Ben, you first. How long have you been working on this story?
We first got some tips last December, around that time, about the mayor's marriage potentially being in trouble, but we didn't really think that that was a big story necessarily. It was something we were kind of keeping an eye on, but it was only within the last 2 weeks or so that we got some tips about the mayor being in a relationship with someone who used to work in his office, and it was just over that period of time that we've been really trying to pin the story down.
You say you became aware of the story last December. How did you become aware of it?
So I should say, you know, this is a story that we've been working on with with the City Hall Bureau, led by David Ryder and my colleague Alicia Hasham. We just kind of heard, I would describe it as almost kind of gossip in political circles.
From
that
who?
Sort of floated. That obviously I can't say. We have to protect our sources, of course. But this was something that was kind of known about. I mean, a lot of people remarked on the fact that the mayor's wife was not with him at his victory party last October, which was a little strange, just about because of how much he talked about, you know, her being a big part of his life, of course, and kind of giving her blessing for him to run as mayor. So it was notable, her absence there. So that kind of tipped us off that there might be something more going on. But as I say, it was only within the last couple of weeks that we were really able to nail down what this potential relationship was, and it was with someone in his office. And that, to us, made it seem that it was very much in the public interest to pursue.
Because the person with whom he had the relationship worked in his office as a subordinate.
Yeah,
That's the story.
I think if he had had an affair with someone outside of his office, that's his private life.
And you would not have reported on that?
I don't think we would have, no. I think the fact that it was with someone in his office raised the idea of potentially an abuse of power. I think our understanding of how relationships work these days, I think, has evolved to the point where I think there are questions raised about consent when there's a relationship between a boss and an employee. To the extent to which that can ever be truly consensual, I think is a matter for debate. And also just that the fact that it was someone in his office raises questions about whether or not it affected his city duties in any way. So that's what really put it over the top for us to be a story in the public interest that we felt was worth reporting.
Okay, let's just get some reaction to this. Jennifer, you obviously you ran against him 4+ years ago. You spent time with him on the hustings, debating him, so on. You were chief planner when he was the mayor of Toronto. I just want to know your initial reaction when you heard about all this. Could you believe it?
No, I couldn't believe it. And as you know, we had a rocky relationship in the beginning, John Tory and I. The Gardiner Expressway, of course, was a very big story. But then we kind of worked it out, and we worked really, really closely together. The King Street pilot was a project that we collaborated really closely on, transforming housing policy, affordable housing. We really worked very, very closely in those last 2.5 years. So I will tell you, this was not something I think anyone who worked closely with him saw coming. I think even his closest advisors were completely flabbergasted that this, both about the affair and about the announcement about the resignation. So, my reaction was very similar to the reaction others had, which was, first of all, this can't be true. Secondly, wow, the mayor just resigned and everything that just happened in the past 8 years, poof, it's gone. There have been questions about his legacy. What will be John Tory's legacy?
Well, hold off on that. We'll get to that.
Yeah,
we'll get
so
to that.
that's, I think the big issue for me was thinking, what does this mean for the past 8 years and what does it mean in terms of what comes next?
All of which we are going to discuss tonight. Sabrina, your initial reaction when you heard about all this guy's nickname is No Story Tory. Boring was his calling card. What'd you think?
After the Rob Ford era, he essentially had one job and one brand, and that was being boring, uneventful, and no major scandals. So it was a shock from that perspective. But then on the other hand, the story of an older male politician sleeping with a staffer, it's also a bit of a cliche, so it's both surprising and unsurprising at the same time. Like Ben said, I think the big story is the potential abuse of workplace power, not only in how it may have impacted this woman and her career, but the larger workplace in general. You remember there will be other people competing for jobs with her. Perhaps other people in the office had to keep a secret. Overall, this is a workplace issue, and we know rule number one, don't sleep with your employees, and he broke that one.
Marcus, what's the story here in your view? What is the overwhelming public interest here?
I mean, my initial reaction, like Jennifer's and everyone else's, was shocked, because here's a guy who has worked all his life for this job and loves this job. Like he gets up at, in the dark and his first one in City Hall, and he's just about the last one to leave. He's out every night doing his job, and he worked. He had a few stumbles in his earlier political career. He ran once for mayor and didn't succeed. He went into provincial politics and didn't succeed. Then finally he got this job. He won once, he won twice, he won a third time, and as you mentioned, he could have been the longest serving mayor in Toronto's history. And now this, out of the blue. It was shocking, and also I think really sad when you think about the effect on his family. He's got grandchildren who will have to be told about this. The woman involved was kind of exposed on social media after people started sort of trawling through social media for it. So it's just sad and tawdry end to this mayoralty.
Just while we're there, the Star has not named this person. In fact, her name has come out on social media, but none of the so-called legacy media have printed her name. Do you think that's the right thing to do? Oh, absolutely. I mean, she shouldn't be dragged into this. Unfortunately, she already has, if people want to look. And that's really unfortunate, because you don't want this thing spreading around and people gossiping about you. It's a terribly painful episode, the whole thing. Okay. Do you know Rosie DiMano?
Yes, of course.
I thought you might. Yeah. You guys work at the same paper. Here's what she had to say, or some of what she had to say in her column just published. I don't question the reporting. I question why it was published. Where is the public service in outing an intensely private matter that appeared to have no political relevance, no legal shakiness, no employment inequity? And I ask that while honestly wondering why Tory stepped down so hastily, which might suggest there are further layers to the story to which I'm not privy. So let's hit this again. What is the compelling public interest in reporting on a consensual affair between two adults?
Again, I think there is the issue of consent, the extent to which any relationship between a boss and their employee can be fully consensual. When that relationship is happening in a public office, there are questions about whether the politician in that office is abusing their power. And then again, I think there are issues about to what extent this might have interfered with the operation of this public office, which is a very powerful office.
Do we know whether that's happened?
I don't think we haven't reported details that can kind of conclude either way, but we do know that this staffer, for instance, was on publicly funded trips with the mayor over the course of several years, and we don't know the details of exactly what happened on those trips or whether they took place before or after the relationship had begun. But those are questions that I think are legitimate to ask. I don't know in what kind of world or what media outlet wouldn't ask those questions? And I think it's notable that, you know, there are some people like my colleague who are saying that this is not a story that's worth reporting. That's not what the mayor is saying. That when we put the questions to the mayor, the response we got back on Friday night in a letter from his lawyer was, you know, this was an error of judgment. It wasn't, this is not a story. It was that this was a mistake, this was inappropriate, and then the mayor resigned.
No question it was an error in judgment. Jennifer, is it a firing offense? In other words, did he have to resign?
Well, I think Sabrina raised all of the key issues here. It's a workplace issue. If the woman involved did not work at the City of Toronto, I don't think we would be sitting at this table. I don't think we would be in a situation where the mayor had resigned. But there's a power dynamic, and this was an inappropriate relationship between an employer and a staff person, and that is in the public interest because this is a public office. And there's an accountability to the public that comes with being in public office. And so some errors are errors that are significant enough that they ought to be discussed, they ought to be litigated in the public domain, and I think that's where we find ourselves right now. So, you know, I think it's also significant what Ben just said, that the mayor himself has said this was an error in judgment. And it's a significant one. The implications on coworkers, the implications on applying for jobs, the dynamic this creates at City Hall. I don't think anyone is going to defend this as the type of culture that we want to see at City Hall.
Nobody's going to defend it, but then, you know, and admittedly, this is almost 30 years ago, but the Bill Clinton example is instructive here in as much as he admitted to an error in judgment, he admitted he did something that was wrong, he powered through, he stayed on the job, he left office as the most popular president since polling began. Why was that not the precedent this time? Why was resignation the precedent?
Well, I think we have a much better understanding about power dynamics, especially in the workplace when it comes to relationships, than we did 30 years ago during the Bill Clinton era. Even our viewing of how that was covered back then versus how we see it now and how we view Monica Lewinsky now, and she's come out and been able to tell her side of the story better. I don't think that situation would have necessarily gone down the same way today, at least for a politician that respects public office and has an ounce of shame. We're so used to politicians not having that, which is why the resignation was in part surprising. But in this day and age, post-Me Too, this is just simply not acceptable. Everyone knows the rules. This is public office. This is a workplace. This was not simply a private relationship. Toronto Star is not playing morality police. This is about a public office.
And therefore,
it's not okay.
And the resignation was appropriate in your view?
That was ultimately his choice to make, but I think it's appropriate for the questions to be raised, and I believe that this was an issue. Absolutely.
Marcus, I want to talk to you about shame, because that's an interesting angle in this story. There is no shame south of the border anymore. Politicians, I mean, you look at the George Santos stuff. There is just no shame anywhere. People do stupid stuff all the time down there, and they just power through. I don't know if this is the right word to use, but were you impressed by the fact that the mayor realized that he'd done something really inappropriate and therefore resigned?
Yeah, I think his reaction actually, his statement was as dignified as you can expect in a situation like this. First of all, he immediately said, look, I know I did something wrong. I'm deeply sorry. He's asking the Integrity Commissioner to look into it to make sure there wasn't any further wrongdoing on his part. He apologized to his family and the whole city, and he said he'd let us all down. And so I think his response was actually good, and as good as it could be in the circumstances.
Okay, let's fess up here. This program airs in the evening, but we are taping it earlier in the day. And as we sit here taping this, recording this, we don't have tape anymore. As we sit here recording this, he hasn't resigned yet. If there is a groundswell, as it appears to be happening, I don't know what your emails are all like, but mine are running 50-1 that he made a mistake resigning, and almost every email I'm getting from people says he shouldn't have resigned. If there is a groundswell for him to reconsider, should he?
Well, first of all, I'd say I'd love to see the demographic data on the groundswell that you're seeing that's in your inbox, because it might be a bit different than mine.
Mine too.
So there you go.
It's as many women as men.
Okay, so 50-1, I'm shocked by that. That's not what I'm hearing at all. I think, look, I think this, in some ways, the challenge we face right now is we're publicly litigating an intensely personal matter that has public implications and has implications for the city. And that makes this an incredibly tricky thing to sort through. And so in speaking about this, I've tried to stay in the space of, look, we need to think about what's in the best interests of the city of Toronto, right? At the end of the day, John Tory has a lot of work to do to go sort out of his life because it's a pretty big mess. And, you know, one of the big questions that might be in the public interest is whether or not it's in the interest of the city to have someone who has, you know, some pretty serious work to be doing at home. There's a reason why politicians put a picture of their beautiful family and their 2 children on their brochures, because they want to portray that they're a portrait of responsibility and stability, because we see that, you know, we want people who are not chaotic and in a personal crisis as our political leaders. I think that's something that is in the public interest. So there's this element of, well, now we know this is a man who's going through pretty much the greatest crisis someone could go through in their life. It doesn't look like it's going to get sorted out soon. So there's a question around that in relation to leadership for the city. Like, I think there's a lot of different layers that keep getting added onto this. And I don't know. In some ways, for me, I think if John Tory was now to unresign, that might be pretty consistent with his brand. That might be pretty consistent with what we've seen in terms of his leadership. And I don't know that that would necessarily help the city.
But let me pick up on what you said. What's in the public interest here? And this is the thing that, again, the emails, the people who tweet at me, this is the thing that they've been saying. Toronto's going through a budget crisis. This city needs an experienced hand at the tiller right now, holding the tiller, to make sure that it can get through this moment. Is this the moment when we need a guy with 50 years experience in politics to go away and somebody brand new on the job to show up? That's the question that people are asking me. What do you think?
Well, maybe he should have thought about that before he ran for yet another term as this relationship was going on. I think he has to be held accountable. And the fact that he's already come forward and said this was wrong, I'm resigning, to then go back on that, I think that could do even more damage to his brand and throw the city into even more chaos, because then we end up in this kind of Rob Ford era. Will he, won't he, what's going on? At this point, he's made his decision. I think he should stick to that. And perhaps he can resign a week or 2 from now. He can oversee the budget being seen in, but ultimately, I think he has to go at this point.
Marcus, is there an argument to be made that with the huge budget crisis facing the city right now, somebody with Tory's experience should rescind his resignation and stay on the job?
I think the opposite is actually true. I think it's a good time to get fresh leadership in the city. I mean, I agree with Sabrina. I don't think he should have gone for a 3rd term. He's had 2 already. There's all sorts of potential fresh new leaders and new ideas out there. He had said he wouldn't run, then changed his mind. And so I think it's a chance for a reset. I mean, Toronto's actually in a bit of trouble right now. We've got a lot of crime going on, a lot of violent incidents. We have a homelessness crisis. We have a housing crisis. We have a budget crisis. And so it's a real chance for a reset. And I think this could turn out to be a good thing for the city.
I know you're a reporter as opposed to a columnist, so I don't know if you want to express a view on that, but are you hearing anything suggesting he might rescind his resignation?
We are hearing that there are people trying to convince him to do that. The extent to which that's an organized effort, I think, is a little unclear. But at City Hall, that there is some chatter that there are people there who are going to press him to stick around. I think we are at this hour on Monday morning. We haven't heard that he's put in his resignation papers yet. So that, I think, is going to lead to speculation that he could stick around at least to see out this budget that goes to council on Wednesday. So yeah, it's still unclear whether or not he might be around for a little bit longer after announcing he would resign.
He's been on this program a lot, obviously, during the 8+ years that he was mayor. Let's play a clip of him in 2019 when he did this program. Sheldon, if you would, roll it.
I don't care if I'm loved. I don't care if people think I'm exciting. I just care that people respect me and that they respect the job that I'm trying to do in terms of working hard and working together with other governments to get things done.
All right, let's talk legacy. If this, in fact, is the end of John Tory's mayoralty and potentially political career, how does the city remember him?
Look, when I ran for mayor, John Tory then already had a problem, which was when you asked a person on the street what they thought of John Tory, they generally liked him. They thought he was a good man. They liked that he was out in the community, that he was showing up. And then when you ask them, what has he done? It dried up pretty quickly. And so my understanding was that this third term was about a legacy building opportunity in the absence of that having happened over the past 8 years. And I should say that he came out of the gate really, really hard with a very bold housing plan just last month that had a lot of the elements that many of us housing advocates have been pushing for many years. So he was kind of poised to actually do it. Like it felt like he was on the cusp of doing the things we were hoping he would do. The challenge is that just got cut really short. So I'm not sure where that leaves us.
Here's documentary filmmaker Barry Averich writing in the Toronto Sun exactly 3 years ago. Here's what he had. Sheldon, let's bring this up. I have enormous respect for him, John Tory, and I know he is working hard. But it would be great if one of the best mayors Toronto has had in a long time actually had a memorable legacy beyond showing up to everything and avoiding a scandal. Sabrina, I mean, this echoes a bit of what Jennifer Keesmaat just had to say. What do you look at when you point to a Tory legacy as mayor?
I think, unfortunately, there won't be much of one after this. When we're talking about should he continue on, I don't think he's had such a stellar legacy or impact on this city that someone else can't step into the job and govern going forward. We look at housing, we look at violence, we look at public transit, like garbage being collected on the street. By almost every measure, we've seen a huge amount of decline over the last 9 years. Now, understandably, after the Ford era, people wanted someone who was stable, who was boring, for lack of a better word, who would be uneventful. But I would argue we got into this little bit of a rut that the city didn't know how to get out of. And that's not John Tory's fault, per se. People knew who they were voting for and what they were voting for. But perhaps this could be an opportunity for a new start. Marcus, legacy?
I think people may be kinder in retrospect to John Tory than they are now. I mean, this was a very dramatic and unfortunate end. But first of all, in his first term, he did successfully return stability and integrity to the city of Toronto after this terrible scandal we went through. And he started working with other governments. He was much better at that than his predecessor. In his second term, there was COVID, and he was actually a superb leader of this city during COVID. He told everybody, go out and get vaccinated. He led this, along with Joe Cressy, the city councillor, led this push to get out into the most disadvantaged communities and work with community organizations to get people vaccinated. He was a steady hand at the tiller. So I think that's a substantial legacy there.
He obviously had it, Ben, as a huge priority to get along with provincial leaders, with federal leaders, and managed to get billions of dollars out of those senior levels of government to put towards projects in the city of Toronto. Does he get credit for that?
I think he should to some extent. I think one of the things that's so, if you're a supporter of Tory is lamentable here is that he had also launched this campaign, or said he was about to launch this campaign to win a new fiscal deal for cities, right? To negotiate with the other levels of government to make cities more financially sustainable. And that is the kind of bold campaign that we hadn't seen from him in the first 2 terms in office. So, it would have been really interesting to watch how that played out and how successful he would have been in that. And now, of course, we'll never know.
One of the things that I heard said, though, was that when Rob Ford, for example, went on the road as the mayor of Toronto, if he had to travel to Los Angeles to meet people in the film business, or if he had to go to the United Kingdom or whatever to try to drum up business, people often were nervous and even embarrassed about what he might do. Mm-hmm. You never worried when John Tory represented the city abroad. Is that fair to say?
I think that's probably fair to say. I mean, his whole brand, of course, is as we've been saying, this kind of upstanding, respectable person, and I think that's why it's been. People are shocked at his resignation, but I think to some extent you can understand when his whole brand was this idea of him being kind of buttoned down and upright, and all of a sudden that's kind of gone in one fell swoop, and you can see that he just didn't want to stick around to kind of tough it out.
Well, let me pick up on that. Do the events of the last 72 hours, Jennifer, negate whatever achievements he may have had over the previous 8+ years, ultimately, at the end of the day?
I don't know. I'm struggling with the conversation because, I was asked this the other day, is this bad for the brand of the city? And all I could think was, what's bad for the brand of the city is people being afraid to go on the TTC. What's bad for the brand of the city is the fact that we have seen an absolute crisis in homelessness in this city. What's bad for the brand of the city is that the garbage bins are overflowing and broken, and the parks are falling apart. Like, you know, so I'm struggling a little bit because I think that if, you know, on most of the measures, you know, we haven't even talked about the potholes and the state of the roads in this city because there's been a lack of investment in very basic infrastructure. And look, I'm an urban designer and a planner by trade. I think about beauty in the city, public art, but I've actually kind of really pulled a lot of that back in the past couple of years because I think we're failing on a lot of basic infrastructure right now. So I go back to those pieces and I say, well, you know, being a nice guy isn't enough if the city's sort of falling apart around you. And again, I agree with Ben as well. John Tory it felt like he was about to get into his groove. The housing plan, the new fiscal deal. He was doing some of the stuff that a mayor actually needs to do straight out of the gate. He was just starting to do that. I was feeling very, very hopeful over the past couple of months. But from a legacy perspective, I don't know. Look at the city 8 years ago. Look at the city today. You could argue that the Rob Ford era really drew on the legacy of the investment we saw under David Miller, and kind of we snuck through that. But at the end of that era, we really needed to focus on city building, and we haven't been doing that for 8 years. We've been talking about keeping taxes low. We've been talking about cutting city staff and making the bureaucracy lower at the very time when we've really needed to reinvest in the city. So I don't know, what do people remember? I think they remember that for the first time in their lives, they're now seeing homeless people sleeping against their community center just down the street here at Yonge and Eglinton, in Scarborough. Like, we have a crisis that is, I never would have imagined the magnitude of despair on the TTC and on the streets of this city that I am seeing today. And I think we need to act like we're in a crisis. I agree with Marcus. Maybe this is an opportunity to actually shift the trajectory and do something really bold.
I read you every Saturday, and you are occasionally very critical of the mayor and occasionally praiseworthy of the mayor. Do you think Toronto's better or worse after 8+ years of John Tory?
Well, that's going to be a big historical question, isn't it? I mean, I think we can sometimes exaggerate the sense of crisis in the city. I agree with everything you say that there's more homelessness on the streets. There was a stabbing again today on the TTC. All these things are very troubling.
A shocking stabbing. A woman stabbed, like slashed in the face.
I know. No, it's truly shocking.
This didn't used to happen.
I know. But do we fully blame the mayor for this? I mean, is he at fault? A lot of other Canadian cities are seeing disorder on their streets as well. It seems to be a national problem. And I think it's just important that we don't surrender to the thought that Toronto is suddenly a hellscape and is going the way of Detroit or something like that. Yes, we have lots of problems, but they're all things we can deal with. More investment, for instance, in mental health seems to be critical. John Tory was calling for a national summit on this issue, and I think he was right about that, because it's not something cities alone can deal with. So going forward, I think this is a chance for a reset and to have somebody positive saying, look, these things are critical, but they can be fixed.
Is Toronto better or worse after 8+ years of Tory?
I have to say worse. Like I said before, by almost every measure, things are not good. People do not feel safe here. They can't afford to live here. As a result, we have all these pile-on problems, whether it's violence on the TTC, whether it's the state of our streets, whether it's labor shortages, because why don't we have nurses? Why don't we have teachers? Where are all the frontline workers? Well, they can't afford to live in the city. And again, I think we've got into a point where we were so traumatized by this Rob Ford era that now we're like, well, at least he was better than Rob Ford. But almost a decade later, I'd hope a city like Toronto that has such potential could aim a little bit higher.
Ben, what are the odds? You know, we've got new strong mayor powers in this city, and whoever, if in fact John Tory leaves and there is a new mayor taking his place and they have these strong mayor powers, what is the possibility that some of the things that Jennifer Keesmaat so disagreed with the mayor on, like rebuilding the Gardiner Expressway, like the Scarborough subway, could be revisited by the next mayor?
I think that depends on the political stripe of the next mayor and how well they get along with the provincial government, because the province gave Toronto's mayor strong mayor powers basically based on the character of John Tory, right? If John Tory is out of the picture, if a more progressive mayor comes in and wants to do things that go against the province, they can't actually use those strong mayor powers. They can only exercise those powers if the province says they're allowed to, if they align with provincial priorities. So I think it'd be really interesting to see if a left-leaning candidate won the mayor's job, whether or not there'd be some changes to the provincial legislation pretty quickly to get rid of those strong mayor powers.
Do you see this as an opportunity to revisit all of those issues that you disagreed with John Tory on and, frankly, which he prevailed on?
Well, we didn't really disagree on that many issues, and the Scarborough subway, that's under construction. That's happening, and we found a solution to that. We found a way to actually advance that in the end. The biggest issue here really is the rebuilding of the Gardner Expressway, because it is the largest capital project. It serves 3% of the morning population. We're spending $2 billion so that 3% of the population does not have an additional 3 minutes to their commute time. So there's no mathematical logic to what we're doing on that project.
So could they revisit that?
Well, they absolutely can revisit it, and we do know, because I did make this one of my key campaign platforms, was we do know that the provinces at that time said they were agnostic. They're not going to interfere in the Gardner decision. So that's something where if City Council sat down and said, look, we've got to stop throwing money after the bad. We have a history of doing this, by the way. We stopped the Allen Expressway, right? It was half built. We stopped it. We said, bad idea. We'll destroy the city.
We didn't stop it. Bill Davis stopped it.
Bill Davis. Oh, I know. I knew.
We're sitting here in the studio named after him, so I had to get that in.
Bill Davis into the conversation. Bill Davis did the right thing. But I will just say that it's never a good idea. Otherwise, we're tearing it down right now, but we're actually going to rebuild it again. Inconceivable. And then your children and my children are going to sit around this table 15 years from now when a vast majority of the city budget is going to maintaining it and saying, well, why didn't we just make it an ad-grade road? Why is it in the sky? No city is building elevated expressways because they're too costly to maintain and they destroy the fabric of the city. That decision, I would say, because you said all the decisions, no, not all the decisions, but that decision is one that has been a poison pill to our municipal budget, and that one ought to be revisited. It was never a good idea. It's still not a good idea, and we need the cash. Like, we need the cash to invest in other parts of the city.
Can I ask you directly?
Sure.
You going to run for mayor?
No, I'm not. I'm not running for mayor. Absolutely not.
Well, you did it once before, and you
I did
like the job, obviously.
I think it's actually a great job. I would like the job. I don't want to be a politician, and for better or worse, I've created a great company. We're absolutely thriving. We've got a ton on our plate, and we're doing the piece that Sabrina said. We were focused on housing for middle-income earners. And the reason I focused on that is because the lifeblood of the city falls apart when you cannot have the people who are critical to the viability of the city living in the city, right? It results in a long commute. It results in all kinds of wonky outcomes. So we're focused on building housing. I see building housing for middle-income earners as being a critical part of the long-term success of the city. So I'm right where I need to be right now.
Okay. I guess in the interests of everybody at the table, I should ask anybody else running for mayor here? Marcus, you're running for mayor?
I'm out, sorry.
You're out. Sabrina?
Not a chance.
Not a chance. Ben?
No, not in the future.
Okay. And neither am I, just so everybody knows. Who's the best person to get the job to replace John Tory? You want to start us off?
I mean, I'm not sure who's the best person. I think there's going to be a lot of people vying for it. I think, what was kind of disheartening about the last election was that John Tory was seen as such a formidable candidate that few people actually, signed up to run against them. I think you're seeing the opposite right now. There's a lot of conversations going on at City Hall and elsewhere about who's going to run and candidates who might kind of fill a similar political space, trying to negotiate who's going to run and who's going to step aside for now.
Do we assume that the sort of the left, the New Democrat part of City Hall will coalesce around one candidate as opposed to having multiple people run?
It could be difficult. I mean, depending on how you divide the left at City Hall, there's a couple of names already that seem pretty solid to be running. Josh Matlow, I think everyone expects him to run. We heard yesterday NDP MPP Bertila Karpache could run as well. There's a few other names in the mix who are kind of to the left of the spectrum, like Anna Bailau. I think you can also expect, though, I think where it's going to get really interesting is to see who the kind of right-wing establishment in the city and the province coalesced around, because you can imagine that political organizers from the Conservatives will want to make sure that there's a candidate to fend off any left-wing challenger, and who exactly that is unclear at the moment. We're hearing people organizing around council like Brad Bradford, but also names from the provincial level, Stan Cho, and can never rule out a Ford in the Toronto election.
Michael Ford's
Michael
there too.
Ford could be one. So yeah, it seems like a lot of names out there. It's going to be a really interesting and, as a political reporter, a pretty exciting election to cover.
In your judgment, who does the city need right now as its next mayor?
Well, all these names are being bandied about. It would be nice to see somebody actually from outside of politics jump in. I mean, Jennifer was sort of from outside of politics when she ran, and that was a promising.
What are you thinking, Pinball Clemens?
I don't have any names at the top of my mind, but I think it's kind of a small pool in City Hall, and a bit of an inbred one, if I can put it that way. A lot of familiar old names, and it would be nice to see somebody. There's so many entrepreneurs in this city who have done well, so many younger people in this city who could jump in. It would be great if this was a wide open, freewheeling race with a lot of big issues on the table.
You got a thought as to who the next mayor ought to be?
I agree with Marcus that it's exciting that we'll actually have a competition of ideas, and hopefully big ideas. We haven't seen real political competition in the city for almost a decade now, and last time Tory was practically acclaimed. So no matter who it ends up being, I agree it'd be wonderful to see some political outsiders come forward with new ideas, perhaps generational change. It's an exciting time.
Why does the 30-something among us here want generational change, I wonder?
Can't see why that would be.
This, of course, all presupposes that the current mayor is, in fact, going to leave.
That is true.
And we don't know 100% for sure that that's going to happen. So what do they say? We shall see. I want to thank everybody for coming into TVO and having this conversation with us at a very odd time in our history here. Ben Spur, City Hall reporter for the Toronto Star, and of course one of the bylines on Friday's report that led to the current mayor's resignation, or announced resignation, we should say. Sabrina Maddow, political columnist for the National Post. And on the other side of the table, Marcus G., the columnist for the Globe and Mail. You can read him every Saturday in what they call Canada's national newspaper. And Jennifer Keesmaat, founder, owner, operator, CEO, what else? Runner of Marquee Developments, former chief planner for the city, and of course a one-time mayoral candidate herself. Thanks, everybody. Great to see you all here.
Thank you.
There's a play currently on at the CAA Theatre in downtown Toronto called Things I Know to Be True. Having seen it a week ago, here's one thing I know to be true. This is one of the best plays I've ever seen. It tells the story of a typical family. Mom, dad, 4 kids, and all of the sweetness and heartbreak and love and combat you'd expect. And we are delighted to welcome the 2 actors who play the parents and who are 2 of our country's finest, Shauna McKenna and Tom McCamus. I am thrilled to have you 2 in those chairs, I gotta say. Thank you for being here today.
Our pleasure.
Thank you.
Okay. Tom, this play premiered 7 years ago in Australia. How much did you know about it before you were cast in it?
I had never heard of it until Phil Riccio, who's our director, gave it to me to read and said, I think I got a play you might like, and give it a read and see if you like it. And I read it, and at the end of it, I was like a mess. I was just like loud sobbing things. I said, okay, I better do this play.
It hit you immediately?
Yeah, it hit me immediately. Yeah.
How about you, Shauna?
Same thing. Philip sent me the script, and I didn't know anything about it, and I read it, and I was a mess as well. Yeah, it's accumulative. You don't know where it's going. There's so many surprises and twists and turns in the script, and it's brutally honest, I think.
Tis, yes indeed. Well, let's find out what it was about this play and your characters that made you decide, I need to play this. You play an average guy. You play an auto worker gets laid off, busies himself in his retirement years in his garden.
Mm-hmm.
What about that scenario fascinated you so much that you thought, I got to play this guy?
Part of the nice part, I've been playing a lot of kind of old yelly guys, like, you know. And this guy's he's kind of gentle. I mean, not always, but for the most part, he's just a kind of guy who just enjoys his life, and he's peaceful and quiet, and tries to make things nice and happy for his family, and just loves life. So it was a pleasure to be just kind of a guy who putters around in the garden, so.
And it does go on from there.
Yeah. It goes other places, but
Gets a bit heavy
but that's the
sometimes.
core of who the man is. So it's lovely to be in that core for a while.
Now, you play a nurse
Yes.
who is really I guess I can say that you're the dominant person in this family. You keep the trains running on time. You're an incredibly strong character. What appealed to you about playing that?
That incredibly strong characters also have their complexities and aren't always so strong.
Very true.
I think she's at the hub of the family, but as she says, he makes the phone calls behind the scenes. She's shouting the orders, but he's the one who gets things done. So, and the fact that she's a mom. She's a mother who never stops worrying about her children, no matter if they're 20, they're 34, they're your kids, right?
And your character has a lot to worry about because they do get into some difficulty.
Yes, there are a lot of family crises in this story.
We shouldn't give people the impression that this is all death and destruction because
Oh.
there's a lot of funny in this play as well.
Yeah.
Okay, shall we? Sheldon, you want to show a little clip from this? Here we go. Roll tape, please.
Pick up your laundry. It's hanging in your closet.
Yeah, okay.
Whoa, you still do his laundry?
Just my shirts.
Mom!
Well, he does his own underwear.
Oh, I've known your mother since we were kids. First and only love.
If he gets dementia, I'm not looking after him. I've looked after people all my life. Did you meet someone?
No.
A boy?
No.
Did he hurt you?
Who hurt you? Your shirt?
Dad, I'm not an idiot.
Okay, that's a great example of how, bam, 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 bam. This stuff gets very quick. And the patter.
Yeah.
You guys got to really be on top of your game. Sean, how do you do that?
I'm not always.
You were when I saw
Oh,
you.
well, that's good. It's, and the way we rehearsed, there is no actual set blocking. So you really have to be listening and playing with each other. And it's, you have to keep on your toes. You have to get your line in or they'll move on without you.
Yeah.
So.
Has that happened?
Oh, yes.
It has.
Yeah.
Okay.
Happened in that clip, actually.
You'd never know it. It all seems so natural.
Yeah.
Now you two are veterans of Stratford, and you've played some of these, magnificent plays with these long soliloquies and so on. And there are not too many scenes in Shakespeare like that, right? Where you got to go bam, 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 bam.
Yeah.
How do you do it?
You listen, and you try to be present, and you just try to be for example, sometimes I'll go and I'll eat a banana, and then sometimes I'll eat an orange, or sometimes I'll just go and get a drink of water, and you're just trying to sort of move around the kitchen and make sure you don't get in the way of Shauna or something, at the same time being aware that you got a line that they do have to hear, so you have to get to a place where the audience can see you to say the line, and it's when you're thinking like that, it's quite exciting, and it's as exciting as standing up and giving a big Shakespeare speech.
So there is a lot more kind of ad-libbing of blocking
Oh, yes.
than one would assume.
Yeah.
Because I thought, wow, how are they just nailing all of those positions so specifically, and you're laughing at me because it's
No, because that was the first time that you saw that particular scene. Sometimes a scene that happens in the garden will happen out in the house, and vice versa. So you just follow the action.
Yeah.
I want to. How do I put this? You dropped the C word in this play.
I did.
You dropped the C word, the see you next Tuesday word.
Yes, the see you next.
Now, I'm thinking you probably don't do that at Stratford. There aren't many occasions which would call for that.
Maybe just backstage. No, I didn't. Yeah.
Do you have any, I don't know, do you have any difficulty with that?
It'd be, well, it sounds better with an Australian accent. I think it sort of jumps out at us in my own sound. But no, I don't have a problem with it, especially because the line that follows it is a funny line.
It is, but
It's shocking.
It's
Yes,
shocking.
it's
That's
shocking.
right. We do not expect the mother of four to be dropping
It's used
that.
much more in British theatre and Australian theatre than it is in our theatre. It's it's part of the sort of like normal patter. And here it's people's jaw drop, and of course my son's jaw drops when I say it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, do you? I want to know if you are so into the role and into getting everything just perfect as you're on stage, that as the secrets in your family start to unveil themselves, do you, Tom? Can you actually hear the audience? Sometimes gasp, sometimes, there are moments where, do you hear that?
Don't necessarily, but you hear the silence, like and because we do take a lot of silences when those things hit us, and you can feel that the whole audience is with you in that kind of thing. So, but I've heard other people have said they've heard off stage, there was a gasp here, but when you're on stage, we don't hear that, or do you?
Yes, not on stage, but when I'm backstage listening or in a quick change or something, I can hear. Or when they announce certain things, they go, oh. There was a very vocal, oh, yesterday. So you do, but you can sense when the audience is with you. And of course, laughter is the most immediate response that you can hear.
Laughter,
so
yes, but some of the reactions are,
yes,
the understated gasp or the...
Yes, they're as shocked as we are.
Have you come to any conclusions as to whether the family you are playing is blessedly typical or quite extraordinary? Which is it, do you think?
I think it's pretty typical.
It is, eh?
It's just that the circumstances are different, or the degrees of the crisis, or, because you can't, change is inevitable, always, and upheaval is inevitable in a family, and children grow up, but they still have issues. And you still worry about them. So I think it is typical, and it's also a look at marriage, a long marriage, and its ups and its downs, and the secrets that are withheld, and the kind lies, the hurtful truths. It takes a long look at that. But love is the foundation, because that's why they're still together, because it's there.
Can I get you on that? The typical family or extraordinary?
Certainly recognizable, I think, and that's, I find myself speaking on stage lines that I speak to my wife at home, so, and...
Which ones? I want to know.
I better not say that. I think, and also with, I have, my wife and I, we have no kids, but at the same time, I recognize this family from all my nieces and nephews and all the people that are the families of friends and things like that. So I think it's recognizable.
I want to read something that Jane Howard wrote in The Guardian when she reviewed your play. Sheldon, you want to bring this graphic up, please? Things I Know to Be True is a snapshot of life, and like life, it comes with countless themes. Audiences will pull out different strands and different stories to focus on, but ultimately, beating its way steadily through the work is the low-level fears we all must live with, that we love too much or that we don't love enough, and that one day we will have to say goodbye. Okay, let me go at this again, Shauna. Is this a family that loves not enough or loves too much?
Both.
Both, simultaneously.
Yes, because sometimes you love your family, but sometimes you can't live with them, or you have to get away. You have to break away as a child and become an adult. And sometimes you only become an adult when you lose your parents, or you recognize that your parents are just people with their flaws, with their, their screw-ups, and you just go, oh, they're like me, So I think they love deeply, but sometimes they can't live together.
Tom, what about it?
Yeah, love to. I know certainly in Bob's case, I think he loves too much.
Bob is your character.
Yeah, Bob's my character, and I think he's always he's a hugger. Like he's always hugging people, and I think he loves way too much.
And that's what they say too, that they're a family that always kisses each other on greetings or goodbye. They're very tactile. They show their affection. And the youngest has this idea that they're perfect.
That's so unlike any other family where the youngest thinks they are perfect.
Yeah, but it's because this is your family. This is what you know. It's sanctuary, right? Home is sanctuary, but it's also can be really suffocating.
Okay, let's talk about how you do what you do. You're doing 8 shows a week?
Yeah.
8 shows a week.
Right.
2 on what day?
2 on Wednesday, 2 on Saturday.
Yeah.
Like, how?
Well, it's what you do. When you're an actor, that's what you do. I mean, when we're at the festivals, you do 8 shows a week, but you don't always do the same play. So you'll be doing, Shakespeare, and then you'll be doing a Chekhov or something. But this is 8 shows of the same show, which is a little bit different for us. And
Yes.
You find it kind of difficult. But Phil's process, which is, as we said before, about moving all over the place and being different, makes it a different show almost every night. So.
Is that right? So it's you're never doing the exact same show consecutively?
No. I mean, the lines are the givens. The story is the given. The whole tone and mood is pretty much the same. But no, it's very different from night to night, where you find yourself, oh, I'm on the different side of the stage right now, so you just have to adapt and improvise. And as you say, where you would walk, you wouldn't normally walk into somebody, or so the chaos of the kitchen is very lifelike, because it is.
Yeah, it is.
But
But when you're doing 8 shows a week,
Yeah.
can you have any life outside of doing 8 shows a week?
not much.
Not much.
Not much. Really?
Because neither of you lives in Toronto, normally.
No.
But you kind of have to now, don't you?
Yes. The thing is, but we both have lots of friends in the city, so you want to see them, but you say, okay, so you're scheduling, okay, we can meet you for after the show for an hour or something, but you have to pace yourself, because it is 8 shows a week.
And you get to experience a bit of Toronto that I haven't for a long time. Like I go to the art gallery all the time and stuff like that.
okay.
So
Yeah.
because I don't live here, I don't have any day-to-day business I have to do. So I'm hanging out in Toronto. I go, well, what am I going to do? Let's go to the art gallery. Or
And I've
go to
seen a
London.
lot of theater.
Yeah.
I've gone to
You
see
have,
it before we got into nights.
Yeah.
I went and saw as much theater as I could because I was here.
Anything you want to recommend?
Oh, I don't know if they've closed yet. No, I'm not going to recommend any shows but ours. I've seen great shows. I've seen, I saw The Fall on Your Knees and 15 Dogs and Martyr and what else? There's some other things.
Seen Pressure yet?
No, not
Pressure's
yet.
good.
I
I
hear
hear
it's
that's
really
good,
good.
Pressure's good, yeah.
I hear-
Sorry to plug another play while you're
No,
on.
but it's
Pressure's
it's
good.
Mervis play. Yeah.
Yeah, Kevin Doyle. You wouldn't think that there was a play in having an argument about the weather with General Eisenhower, but there is.
Yeah.
Because if you're depending on D-Day landing, having nice weather,
I know.
you got to know your meteorology.
I
Anyway,
love weather.
that's another
The Weather
plug.
Network's one of my favorite things to watch. So.
What do you do, Shauna, when you forget a line? Has that
I
happened?
act like I never have forgotten a line. Probably sometimes if I've forgotten a line, I try to make the next line seem seamless and in my thought, or I've forgotten. It's St. Joan. The opening night, I forgot a line, and I just paced around the stage until it came to me. And another actress came up to me after and said, "Oh, that pause! I wish I had the courage to take a pause like that." I think it was Barbara Gordon. Anyway, it was a fluke.
no idea.
It was a fluke. But I just thought it'll come to me eventually, and it did.
And it did.
Yeah.
Is there, before the line comes to you, is there abject terror?
No, when you realize you're not going to know what it is. If you start thinking about it ahead of time, that's when the terror comes, because you go, don't think about that. When it doesn't come, you think, okay, I know this. It will come. And if not, if you're acting with other people, someone may save you.
Me.
Oh, yeah, may. And if you're doing a one-person show, well, they haven't seen it before, so you just you carry on,
Tom, how about you? You ever forgotten a line?
Oh, yeah, lots of times.
And what do you do?
Sometimes I just make up other lines.
Yeah.
Sometimes the one is, where you're kind of going, there's a giant pause, and you go, what's going on? And you suddenly realize you've forgotten the line, but you thought it was the other person that's forgotten the
Yes,
line. So.
yes.
But yeah, usually it does come to you. I've had ones where nobody can save you. There's nothing you can do, and it feels like you're waiting there for like 5 or 10 minutes. It usually isn't. It's maybe 30 seconds at the most. But and your brain kind of clicks in to go, how do I save myself? And you'll jump to something that you know. I've done ones where I go, I've got a big speech, and I say, I know if I dry on this one, I just jump to the end of here, and that's fine. So.
Yeah.
Don't you have a prompter, though? Somebody who can yell the line at you from the wings? You don't have that.
Well, that'll happen. I mean, I've seen it before where when actors have been in real trouble and they just look up at stage management, go line, and then they'll call the line. And the audience sometimes, because that's the actor's huge fear, but the audience will go, oh my God, that was so exciting. So,
Yes, because everybody doesn't know what's going to happen.
That's right,
They
yeah.
really don't know
Yeah.
what's going to happen. So the stakes kind of rise. I mean, I remember doing Search for Signs of Intelligent Life in the Universe, and I was supposed to read something up from a Post-it, and stage management up in the booth at the Belfry Theatre was sticking Post-its all up on the window, thinking I might see and know that, oh, that's what I do next. But no, so yeah.
You have both done, I mean, decades and decades worth of work at Stratford, for example. Have you ever worked together, the two of you?
Yeah, this is our...
Many times.
Yeah, many
Many
times.
times.
This is our...
Yeah.
I figure we've done about 10
9
plays
or
together.
10
Yeah.
plays
10 plays together.
Yeah.
Okay. How have I missed all of them? How's that possible? I'm in Stratford all the time. I don't think I've ever seen you two together in a play.
Yeah, we did Dangerous Liaison together.
Yes, we did King John.
King John together. We did...
Benefactors here, St. Joan here.
Yeah. Dangerous Liaison. Dancing Alunsa we did together.
Yes.
Okay, this explains it. I haven't seen any of those.
Fedra.
Okay.
So we did
Fedra.
Fedra. That's the only other time we played husband and wife is Fedra.
Yeah, Matchmaker.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
so
can I ask some, like,
personal questions?
dirty little secrets here?
Yes.
Do you actually have to like him personally in order to do a good job acting opposite him?
No, but I do.
How about you?
Yeah, no, same.
Same.
Yeah.
Same.
Yeah.
So you two actually get on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
Oh,
It's
how
pretty-
disappointing. I was really looking for some good dirt there or
know.
something.
Well,
no,
I think
Tom,
it-
I don't know anybody who doesn't get on with. Do you know people
I'm
who
sure
don't
there
get
are.
on with you?
I'm sure there are.
Oh.
But the thing is that, I mean, if we didn't like each other, we probably wouldn't work together as much.
Yes.
It's like
Yeah.
if you don't like somebody, you go, okay, I can do it, but then you go, you know what, I'm just not going to do it the next time. So,
No.
but I adore working with Sean, and we have a great time.
Me too. And when you hear how Tom's doing, you go, oh well, okay.
Yeah.
It's sort of, oh, okay.
And we feel just really comfortable together, and we can bring a lot of our relationship on stage with these two people, and you know, like. Yeah, we laugh a lot in this play together, and a lot of it is just Tom and Shauna laughing at each other. Like, oh, he doesn't know what to say next, so he's going to have a big pause here. So what's going to happen?
Can I tell you something? It shows.
Oh.
I mean, you two are just perfect together. Things I Know to Be True, which is now held over to February 26th, because I gather folks want to see it,
Right.
and I'm not surprised. Great show. Thank you so much for coming into TVO tonight. This was great.
Pleasure. Thank you.
And that is the agenda for Monday, February 13th, 2023. With artificial intelligence making leaps and bounds of progress, tomorrow we'll ask whether AI is, or is about to be, sentient. I'm Steve Paikin. Thanks for watching TVO, for joining us online at TVO.org, and we'll see you again tomorrow.
The Agenda with Steve Paikin is made possible through generous philanthropic contributions from viewers like you. Thank you for supporting TVO's journalism.
The Agenda is always on. To catch up on conversations from this week or any week, visit our website, tvo.org/theagenda, or our YouTube page at youtube.com/theagenda. It's all there for whenever you want to watch.